Uber passengers of Reddit that have given 1/5 stars on a ride. What happened to make it so bad? Didn't acknowledge me at all. Had some song screaming just suck that big dig and eat that pussy on loop. And was Facebooking while driving. Lazy town feet Lil Jon. Gotta do the cooking by the book. The driver didn't want to wait in traffic, so he drove up onto the sidewalk. We all screamed at him to get back on the road as he continued to drive down the sidewalk while pedestrians ran out of the way. He told us that it wasn't a sidewalk. It was an Uber lane. It was a miracle he didn't actually run anyone over. Pretty sure that's more of a call the police than a rate 1-star situation. Right? Why aren't these people reporting these dangerous drivers? My Uber was new to the area and attempted to drive down a railroad track. I asked what he was doing and he said oh sorry. Kept talking me non-stop and was asking me sexual questions and kept trying to show me music videos on his phone while driving and drove me to the wrong location and ended up charging me more. Immediately gave him a 1-star. Told Mimi gleefully that she brake checks people who tailgate her. Then proceeded to do it multiple times. She had 3 kids with her. One in the front. Probably 14. A preteen in the back and a toddler. No older than 3 also in the back with no car seat. She was also driving erratically and reeked of weed. Uber driver was visibly drunk. Not blackout drunk. But it was obvious he was having a hard time staying in his lane. He kept veering over the yellow line. Then would jerk the wheel the other way. Nearly running us off the road a few times. He also had an open can of Bud Light in his cup holder. I had him drop me off a few blocks from my actual destination because I didn't want to die that night. Rated him 1 star. And reported him. Not sure if anything came from it. Stopped on the highway to read road signs during rush hour more than once. When I got into the car, he immediately yelled in a stern voice. State your account ID. I take Uber almost daily. And I know drivers like to ask for your name. But I was so taken aback by the aggressive yelling. As soon as I got into the car, I was met with the most awful smell I've ever experienced in my whole life. It was like something died in his car. I had to hold my breath throughout the 20-minute ride. Then, he drove me to the wrong place. 2 times. By the 2nd time, I just decided to walk to my destination because I was so vexed by the smell. Before I got out, after sitting in the car in silence, he yelled, "Rate 5 stars." He wouldn't unlock the door until I agreed. Yep. 1/5. Tried to sleep with me. I had to call Uber and report them. They drove over my foot as I was trying to get my luggage into the car lol. He decided it was a good time to practice the flute. He refused to acknowledge my presence and kept asking my husband if he thought it was fine that he, the driver, wanted to take a second wife because he believed men should be happy. My husband was not about that at all and said that if he wanted a second wife, she deserved a second husband, and the driver flipped out and told us that men deserve more than women and that she should be fulfilled by taking care of his children. It was incredibly surreal, uncomfortable and demeaning. So yeah. A big complaint was filed with Lyft. Edit. He specifically said he did not believe in divorce and wanted multiple wives because it was normal in his religion. I'm also the person that ordered and paid for the ride, and he actually shushed me several times for chiming in. They just never came. I waited 20 minutes and the car drove around in circles nowhere near my location. I eventually just cancelled, but when I did my score dropped. I went from a 5.00 to like a 4.9 or something. So she must have rated me. Then it gave me the option to rate her, so I gave her a 1/5. I don't know if it was a glitch or what, but now I can never recover my perfect score. I was taking an Uber home from the airport. The ride was perfect and he even insisted on dropping my baggage to the front door. Awesome. He then asked if he could use the restroom really quick, and of course I obliged. He wasn't in there for more than 3 minutes. But when I went to wash my hands after, I found my bathroom destroyed. Sheet was all over the toilet seat and just ducking everywhere. I really wish he had just taken more than a minute and shat like a normal human being, but the dude must have had a leaky butthole because there was sheet on my walls too. A 1-star review was the bare minimum, I think. She was simultaneously driving for left and picked up another passenger completely out of our way. Then proceeded to brag about how she picked up some high school kids earlier and they had their destination set to the liquor store where she bought them liquor. I was at the DC Zoo and needed to get the metro and had foolishly decided I didn't need my cane, so didn't want to walk back. The driver picked me up and tried to convince me to just get a ride to Union Station instead of the nearest red line. When I declined, he pulled over and cancelled the ride, reporting me as drunk and abusive. He drove me around the ducking planet because he missed road signs and somehow got on the highway. I looked up and was horrified. I asked him why we got on the highway and he said because he couldn't turn the other way because there was too much traffic. The trip was 15 minutes but took 1 hour and 2 minutes. It was insane. They tried to charge me for the whole trip too. I've had one of those too. Ducking airport access highway 2, so not a ton of exits to turn around at. Just going from highway to highway for an hour on what should have been a 19-minute trip. Actually, it shouldn't have been a trip at all, but the Silver Line decided to not exist that day. Didn't have a problem getting refunded though, thankfully. I'm a Riddisher driver. And only rarely take Uber DD as a passenger. The first one I gave was because the car was absolutely ducking filthy. I know after a long night the car can get a little dirty. But this seriously looks like it had never been cleaned, vacuumed in forever. The trip itself was okay though. The next one came about due to the driver herself. It was a DD trip. And I needed to make a quick stop en route at an ATM. First, the driver berated me for not having my proper name in the app. Turns out this was a DD platform error. Nothing I'd done wrong. Then argued endlessly with me about putting in intermediate stops. At the time, DD didn't allow you edit the route or have multiple stops. You can now. And this itch refused to admit she was wrong. She stopped the car and told me to get out. But kept the trip running and drove towards my destination. 1D her. Reported her for fraud and got a refund. Last one was the driver who was clearly annoyed because he didn't want to do the trip. Which was 30 minutes from the city to where I was staying. I was on a work trip in another city. Riding into my first shift at around 5 AM. We were having a casual conversation and he asked whether I had a boyfriend. I said yes. As we were pulling into the empty parking lot, no one else was there yet. And I was trying to figure out which of the buildings I was supposed to be in. He asked if I would go get a coffee with him instead. I said no. And told him I thought it was the building straight ahead. But he turned the other way and started circling the parking lot. He said something about no one else being there yet, so I should just get coffee with him. And I said no again and asked him to just stop and let me out and I would find my way by foot. He let me out but then pulled into a parking spot and lingered there until sometime after I found my way in. He had a lot of stuff in the back and made me ride in the front with him. I hate riding in the front with Uber drivers, so I told him I'll just get another Uber and he persisted for me to ride with him. I was already late to a dinner with my family, so I got in and it was more uncomfortable because he asked a lot of personal questions like where I worked and what my shifts were. Once I got out I immediately gave him 1 star and would have given him some negative stars as well if I could. Took an Uber from my house to the airport for a work trip. Flight was at 10 AM. Picked me up at 7:30. Got a call from my boss on the way in. Driver screamed at me to hang up because he couldn't hear his podcast on his headphones. My boss, who heard the insane rant, told the entire team to switch to Lyft or taxis after that. Know what? You know reverse card. I used to drive for Uber. I once starred a passenger because he wanted me to end the trip early. Then drive him the rest of the way. To save him money. Because come on bro. I once starred a passenger because he booked a regular Uber, 4 seat belts, despite having a group of 8 people. Because an Uber XL costs like $1 more. I once starred an old drunk lady because she would not stay in her seat and off my head. Yes, Ethel. My head is shaved. And it is hella sexy. But we are on the freeway. Sit the duck down. I once starred a dude who changed his destination 6 times in one trip. And made me change it on his phone for him. I once starred a pair of freshman chicks who were mad that I wouldn't let them light a joint in my car. You're not that cute. Listen to Elizabeth. I once starred every single drunk methodica who got pizza grease, falafel bits, or fried chicken crumbs in my car. I have to clean that. You little sheets. He hit a cyclist who was taking home a pizza slice. Didn't help him up. Didn't buy him a new pizza slice. He also ran a bunch of red lights. And asked for 5 stars at the end. Immediately when I got in the car, I was hit by an incense smell that was so strong it gave me an instant headache. She spent the whole ride trying to get me to join her essential oil downline in a well-known oil MLM. I declined politely and then firmly, I thought. We got to my destination and my head was pounding. She stopped and locked the doors. She told me that she wasn't going to let me out until I gave her my email address. I kind of chuckled and unlocked my door and she immediately locked it again. Then she pressed child lock so that when I tried to open the door it didn't budge. I was shocked and scared. And she repeated that I had to give her my email address and handed me a notepad and pen. I made one up and dashed out of there. Immediately reported her. A couple of weeks later she somehow found me on Facebook and sent a friend request. Needless to say I blocked her. She was texting and driving. Yelled duck as she almost hit the curb while entering the interstate. And she wasn't wearing a seatbelt. We were stoned and terrified the whole time. They drove with their knee. Even after I asked them to please not to.